Researchers at the University of Reading did something almost nobody bothers to do. They actually lab tested how much salt is really in your takeaway order. Instead of trusting what the menu says. The results, published this year in the journal PLOS1, found that 47% of the takeaway meals they tested contained more sodium than the restaurant had declared, not a rounding error. In some cases nearly double. Pasta dishes, curries, and pizzas were the worst offenders. And the study's authors were blunt about what that means for anyone using a menu's printed nutrition numbers to manage their diet, blood pressure, or heart health. Before you panic and swear off takeaway forever, or shrug this off as one more scary headline, the actual study is more specific and more useful than either reaction. Let us sort the signal from the noise. Get the methodology straight before the numbers. Researchers purchased 39 meals from 23 different takeaway outlets in Reading, England, spanning 11 national restaurant chains alongside independent, locally owned restaurants. Every meal was sent to a laboratory for direct chemical analysis of its sodium content, then compared against whatever salt figure the restaurant had published on its menu or website. The United Kingdom's recommended daily salt intake for an adult is 6 grams total across every meal and snack in a day, which is the benchmark the researchers measured each dish against. This was not a survey asking restaurants to self-report, and it was not an estimate based on standard recipes. It was actual food, bought the normal way a customer would order it, tested directly for what it contained. That distinction matters, because it means the gap this study found is not a paperwork error. It reflects what genuinely ends up on the plate. Look at where the worst gaps actually showed up. Pasta dishes carried the most salt per serving of any category, averaging 7.2 grams. Which on its own exceeds the entire daily recommended limit in a single meal. And one pasta dish tested as high as 11.2 grams. Nearly double what an adult should eat in an entire day. Curry dishes showed the widest swing of any category, ranging from 2.3 grams on the low end up to 9.4 grams on the high end. Meaning two curries with similar names and similar menu prices could differ by a factor of 4 in actual salt content. Meat pizzas averaged 1.6 grams of salt per 100 grams. The highest concentration by weight in the study. Interestingly, chips from traditional fish and chip shops, where salt is typically added by hand after cooking and often only on request, averaged just 0.2 grams per serving, far below chips from other outlet types, which averaged closer to a full gram. Understand why this gap exists before blaming any one restaurant for lying. Nutrition figures on a takeaway menu are typically calculated once, from a standard recipe, using average ingredient quantities and a fixed cooking method. Real kitchens do not work that way. A cook adding a pinch more salt to taste. A sauce reduced longer than the recipe calls for concentrating its sodium. Or a supplier switching to a saltier stock or pre-made sauce base between batches can each push a dish well past its printed number, without anyone doing anything the restaurant would call wrong. Independent restaurants also face lighter testing requirements than large chains with dedicated nutrition labeling teams, and the study found variation across both categories, chains and independents. None of this requires bad intent. It mostly reflects how genuinely difficult it is to keep a hand-cooked dish's sodium content consistent, meal after meal. When the number on the menu was calculated once and never independently re-verified against what customers actually receive. Here is what this study does not prove. It tested 39 meals from 23 outlets in one English town, Reading, which is a real Useful. Peer-reviewed sample. But it is not a nationwide or global survey. And it says nothing certain about the specific takeaway near you. In your city. On a different continent. 47% exceeding declared salt does not mean every dish at every restaurant is dangerously salty. The study itself found a wide range. From admirably low sodium fish and chips to alarmingly high sodium pasta. And one high sodium meal is not the same danger as a diet built around high sodium meals every day. The health risks tied to sodium, primarily high blood pressure and cardiovascular strain, come from sustained average intake over months and years, not from any single dinner. Treat this as solid evidence that printed nutrition numbers on takeaway menus deserve real skepticism, not as proof that your last order was a health emergency. Quick recap. University of Reading researchers lab tested 39 takeaway meals from 23 outlets and found 47% contained more salt than the menu declared, with some pasta dishes hitting nearly double the entire daily recommended limit in one serving, while fish and chip shop chips came in surprisingly low. So, signal or noise? Signal. The lab testing is rigorous, peer-reviewed, and reveals a real, consistent gap between declared and actual sodium in takeaway food that is worth knowing about. Noise. On treating this as proof that takeaway food everywhere is secretly poisoning you. The sample is geographically narrow and the variation within categories was often larger than the average itself. The practical takeaway. If you are watching sodium for a real medical reason, treat any takeaway menu's salt number as a rough estimate, not a lab certificate. And pasta and curry dishes deserve the most skepticism. Subscribe for the nutrition claims checked against the actual research. Signal from the noise. Every week.